I'm super excited to welcome Jordy Tait to the show. Jordy is somebody that I was able to meet more recently, although one of our mutual friends tried to connect us, saying that we'd be fast friends. And sure enough, here we are, jumping on a podcast together. And Jordy's a business coach, consultant, and really working with leaders to help them with recruiting and retention at Trailblaze Partners. Sorry. And Jordy, I'd love to dive into like who you are, what you're up to, and also have an awesome conversation today around leadership, remote work, and really just some of the things that you're seeing in your work with leaders and people in business and how they get in their own way, for some sharing and some insights for our listeners.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited. Thanks for having me on. I love podcasts and I love having conversations with you. I feel like we always have a hard time cutting them at the end. So it's going to be a good one. Yeah. So my name is Jordy Tait. Born and raised in Vancouver, lived here my whole life and probably always will. And I'm a partner in Trailblaze Partners, as you mentioned. So I work with both small businesses as a coach and then larger businesses as a consultant, working on projects to help them mainly around their people. And especially right now, it's super relevant with the Great Resignation and COVID and really big challenges in recruiting. So I'm working with a lot of different businesses on how they recruit people, how they engage them, and how they retain them through their culture and leadership.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. We'll kind of dive into that in a little bit, just some of the things that you're seeing and your experiences with that. But I'd love to start with a bit of your story just to provide some context for people, because I think it's such a unique and enlightening way to see people's paths through their career and how they've gotten to where they are. So I'd love to start with like 5 years ago, where were you? Because it's a very different place than where you are today, and kind of how that came to be.
Yeah. 5 years ago, it's almost unrecognizable. I went to UBC and I studied geography in my early 20s. And at the time I thought I'm going to go into urban planning or something along those lines. And I was very interested in it, but the deeper I got in my university degree, the less I believed in that path for myself. And the more worried I started to get about what am I going to do? Like, I'm spending all this time and money on getting a degree. And by the time I graduated, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. I don't know what I want to do. And like, what have I done? And I was very lost. And my answer at the time was, I'm going to go traveling. And hopefully through traveling, I'm going to figure out what I want or what I like and a little more about myself. So I started a painting business, just myself at the time. And instead of going into the degree, like the area of work that my degree kind of lined me up for, I just started painting houses for friends, for family, for their network. And I would paint for about 8 months a year, and then I'd backpack for the other 4 months of the year. I go to Asia, Australia, Europe, Central America. And every time I went on a trip, I was like, I've got to go find myself. I've got to go learn about what I like, and I've got to go find what it is I'm going to do. And that was a great time. Like, I had so much freedom and fun. But by the time I got to 25, I was actually still living at home and I was still painting. And I was starting to really feel like almost like I was stuck, because now I'd been out of university for 3 years. I'd been painting houses for 5. And I was like, okay, is this like all I'm going to be able to do? Because now I'm just developing these skills in one specific area. And I had no clue how they were going to translate into anything else. And so I started to do like a lot of thinking about is there a side hustle I could start? Is there a career I could switch into? What do I like? What am I passionate about? And the main problem I was having was I saw painting as a dead end, because I looked around at the people I worked with who were 40, 50, 60 years old and had done it their whole lives and were very like trapped and frustrated. And I knew I didn't want that, but I also didn't know how to change it up. And my kind of solution was to try to think my way out of it. Like, and we can get to my saboteurs in a minute here, but like I have a drive for perfectionism, and I was trying to figure out what's the perfect career that I can like jump into, and like, do I go back to school? What do I do? What do my skills apply to?
Which thank you for sharing that, because I think it's such a trap. Like I chat with a lot of people, and often it's at a very kind of what we would call like a big decision point. It's like, you've left university, what do I do? Or like, I really don't like my job, what do I do? And there's these like transition points are a huge time of fear, and like there's so much extra weight that comes along with it. What were some of the fears that you had, or the things going through your head when you're in that spot of being lost and not sure where to go next? And what saboteurs? So
Well,
for people that don't know what saboteurs are, these are archetypal ways that we self-sabotage our own ways to success. And in other podcasts, I'm going to do some other shows that go in more depth to the different ways that happens. But yeah, for you, like, what showed up for you?
yeah. So I was very addicted to like personal development and growth. And while I was working, I was listening to podcasts. I'd go home and read. I would follow inspiring people who I wanted to learn how to be more like them. But and I felt like I was learning a lot and growing a lot, but I also had this big discomfort with like failure or picking the wrong thing. And I kind of had this picture of like, you go to university, you learn a skill, you pick your thing, and then you do that for the rest of your life. And if you pick wrong, then you've made a huge mistake and you're trapped in it. And like the older, now looking back, I realized like I've changed 3 or 4 times since then, dramatically in ways I never could have planned. But at the time, I felt really stuck in that. And so I was trying to create the perfect plan before I changed what I was doing. And I was trying to think my way to a solution. And it just kept sending me into these like loops of doubt and questioning. And
So
basically, I felt like, what am I going to do?
yeah. So when you say thinking your way out of it, for somebody that might kind of be in that space, what is that like? And what does it look like for you when you're trying to think your way out of something? And what did you do
Well,
differently?
like I said, I was listening to so many podcasts. I was reading books, and I kept looking for like a clear answer of like, this is the next thing I need to do, or this is the path for me, or whatever. Um, and I was afraid to like take any action until I felt like I'd figured out the perfect thing. And so I was kind of immobilized in just thinking, but not doing. And there would be like moments of inspiration of like, maybe I want to do this career, or I want to try that thing. And then I would like negative self-talk myself out of it and say, I wouldn't like it as much as I think, or I wouldn't be as good at it, or I would fail, or whatever. So it kept me pretty stuck, and it just kept working. I was really good at painting, and I enjoyed parts of it, but I just kept doing it. And I got to a place of like burnout and frustration and thinking like, I got to do something else. But because my time is running out to make a change. I just felt like I had this small window. Otherwise, I would just be that forever. And at the time, then I got connected with O2E brands and Wow One Day Painting.
So for
And
yeah, so for those unaware, O2E runs and owns 1-800 got junk, Wow One a Day Painting, and Shack Shine. Like, they're a massive franchise company across the world, North America mainly, but are they in
yeah,
like
North
Australia and
America.
stuff?
Yeah. And luckily, I was kind of in this place of like, what am I going to do? And then I got connected with Wow One Day Painting, and they were looking for someone with my experience as a painter, but also someone with like a university degree and like a drive to do more than just paint, to come in and become a corporate trainer and coach for their painting franchises. So it ended up being, I went from feeling like I've hit this dead end where I've developed all these skills that I'll never be able to apply to anything else, to then finding a job where that expertise was super valuable and I got to apply it to other painting businesses, small business owners, other painters. And it basically showed me that like what I was learning wasn't wasted. Like it was applicable outside of just the actual act of painting. And then for the next 4 years, I worked with hundreds of businesses, like dozens across North America, owners. I was training and helping new business owners start up their business and then coaching them through their first 2 years as they grew. And it was like this crazy transformation and leap for me from just being the one doing it all to then supporting people and sharing my knowledge that I had learned. And the most transformational part of it was that O2E heavily invested in its employees. And I got leadership training, I got coaching training, I got business training. And over the next 4 years, I felt like I got like an MBA while working. And I got exposed to all these really cool concepts, and coaching ultimately kind of came out of that for me as like something I was passionate about, the development and the growth from it. And then kind of led to where I am now.
And do you have an example of like a powerful piece of coaching that you received? Like, is there any memorable moments where you're like, it kind of shifted your trajectory while you were at O2E?
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone in the company gets a weekly coaching session with their leader. So the whole company is always passing coaching through all these levels of the teams. And I had a really good boss, Lee Adler, who still works there. And we would sit down once a week and he would tell me like, here's what I think you need to work on. I would bring some things to him. And he was really good at providing honest feedback and pushing me and showing me like where my gaps were and what I needed to do to overcome them. And the big one that he helped me on and that I'm still continuously working on was addressing conflict with people, having tough conversations. And again, one of my top saboteurs is the pleaser, which is just trying to be everything to anyone and not really wanting to put up a boundary or have the tough conversation with people because I feel like it will mean they won't like me as much. And so he said, you need to learn how to address conflict. You need how to like learn how to have really important conversations and tell people what's real. And even though that felt incredibly uncomfortable at the time, the more I practiced it and the more I learned, the more I saw the value. And now it's a huge part of what I help other leaders do as well.
Mm-hmm. Which is such a great reflection, because I think often we see, or this is my own experience, these things that we struggle with, we tend to avoid. Like we don't want to talk about them, and it's uncomfortable. Like we don't like them. It's a weakness. And that's where the fears, doubts, and judgment tends to come up in that space. Like we get more into a survival mode when we're weak at something and somebody's calling us out. And it's often so hard to see how that can be a gift at the time. And often, especially for somebody that's, they tend to avoid conflict, you tend to close that off and like put a wall up around it so you don't even go into it. And I think it's such a great example of hearing how something that you work on is something that you work on. It becomes more of a strength that you can leverage, but more so, like more meta level, you're coaching people through that same process that you went through. And what a gift that is to give other people, and that ripple effect that happens with something that you would never think would be something that would have that kind of impact.
Yeah.
So I'm always
coaching.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I think coaching creates a safe space to like bring up those fears and the insecurities and the things that you struggle with, and to do work on them in a supportive environment. And like, I got addicted to that feeling of here's something that I have a blocker around. It used to be conflict, then it was public speaking. There's all these different things. And instead of saying, oh, I'm afraid of that, or I'm not good at it, I'm not going to do it. Coaching gave me the platform to say, okay, let's work on it, let's dig in, let's practice, and the confidence to know that I can learn and overcome it over time.
So I think we both know coaching is such a valuable skill. Um, it's just crucial for great culture and all the things that you probably work on with clients. Um, like, what would you be sharing with other entrepreneurs that maybe haven't experienced coaching the same way that you've had access to, and maybe don't quite fully understand the depth or the application of it? So for somebody that's maybe it's a new business owner or they're a newer leader, what would you be sharing with them around the impact of coaching and why it should be an integral part of your culture?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, I'm very driven by personal growth and development. And I spent a ton of time trying to do it for myself in a vacuum of just, I'm reading books, I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to make changes. And I was growing. But when I started to get weekly coaching, I started to grow way faster and to make leaps that I couldn't have made alone because I was working on things that were like, I didn't even know I was bad at them, or I didn't even know how to take the first step to improve at them. So to me, coaching is like putting fuel on a fire. It's like it gives you a path to grow way faster, and you get to leverage someone else who's either been there before and done it and you're learning from them, or they're like teaching you a way to grow and to overcome things on your own that you can then apply and use on your own. Um, I at O2E, I looked around and all the people that I was most inspired by were powerful leaders and powerful coaches, just across the board. Those were the guys in the company I looked up to. Those were the women in the company I looked up to. They could sit in a room and they could get everyone's attention, and someone could come to them with a challenge and they could help them through it. And so I got really into that. And I think that with the businesses I work with, coaching is a tool to share your impact and your power with the rest of the people on your team, and to give them the same type of growth that most people want for themselves.
Yeah, which is so cool because I think that's an aspect of running a business that gets lost in the daily hustle. Like there's just so much, we need results. Like everybody's running really fast to try and get somewhere. And I think it's one of the first things that drops off is when there's problems, people jump into problem solve, and you're not giving that, you're not empowering that person to problem solve for themselves. So they're not building some of those skills or capacities for themselves. So in a way, like short term, it's actually a great thing because you get the answer faster. You move a project along a little bit faster because you're a bit more advising a little bit more. But long term, you lose some of that connection. You lose some of that empowerment for that person, for them to level up. And I think over time, this is my own personal opinion, you lose out on some of the efficiency in the business because the leaders are taking on more responsibility than they should.
Yeah, and
or
they
need
create
to.
dependencies. Um,
Mm.
I think of like a powerful leader is someone who makes everyone around them better every day. And if you've ever had a leader like that, or you've ever worked with a coach, you get this addicting feeling of working with them because every time you speak to them, they help you grow and they help you learn. And over time, eventually you may outgrow that business or that role, but that's what good leaders do. They empower their people, they give them skills to grow. And when I think about the powerful leaders who I've looked up to, books I've read, when I look at all those people, you read a book about, the CEO of a massive company, they all have coaches. And when you think about athletes, when you think about anyone who's highly successful in this world, they have a coach. They haven't just like learned everything alone in a vacuum. They have coaches, they have mentors, they have support. And they know that the more they invest in growing themselves, the more they're going to be able to grow and do more. And it creates this kind of positive feedback loop.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things, kind of like a thread through all of this and through the things that always excite me, is like doing more than you think you're capable of, or like your potential and what we think we're capable of with compared to what's actually available to you. And before we chatted, or before this call, we were chatting, and you brought up the example of Anthony Bourdain, who I love. He's one of the few kind of celebrities that I always looked up to, and I loved his shows. So I just really enjoy him and what he brought to travel and culture and food and all that kind of stuff. But it was just such a unique example of potential at work. And I'd love to hear your perspective on how that shows up, and maybe even through your own example too, like what you were working on and where you are today. But I think
Yeah.
he's such a identifiable example of this.
Yeah. He was always like a huge inspiration for me. When I was traveling, he inspired me to go to places that I never would have thought of before because I would have felt uncomfortable or unsafe. And he showed me that everywhere is safe and interesting, and people are people anywhere you go. So he was hugely inspirational for me. And at the time when I was feeling like stuck and struggling, he was also inspiring to me because he wrote Kitchen Confidential, the book that made him famous, in his 40s. And until then, he had been a chef in New York, but and like maybe fairly successful as a chef, but like had a fairly like consistent life and no fame or anything, and not really any indication that his life was going to change. And then he wrote this book, Kitchen Confidential. It blew up. He got famous. And 2 years later, he's now traveling the world as for his job. And he becomes like a celebrity. And the rest of his life was totally different. And I think when I was younger and I read this story, it broke that thought pattern I had, which was you have to pick your career and get it right away. Otherwise, you'll like not have a good path. And it was like, oh, your life can change entirely at any age. It doesn't all happen when you're young. It can happen at any point when you're older. And the work that you do to get there, like for him, it was his knowledge and experience as a chef that enabled him to write a book that then launched the next thing for him. For me, it was my knowledge and experience as a painter, which gave me the what I needed to be able to become a coach in the industry. And then ultimately now that experience working as a coach and a trainer has allowed me to become a consultant and continue to grow. And so that's where I look at like, I love the idea that at 40, my career and life could take a total 180 and I could end up doing something completely different unexpectedly. And that really like made me much more excited about life and the potential we have and how it can totally change at any time.
Yeah, there's something around finding the joy in the uncertainty. I think one of the things that I see a lot with clients, and just like the sense that I get with most people, is when you have some certainty, when you have some clear direction, it gives you some stability. And so I think one of the things that I see a lot is this fear of uncertainty. And when there's no control over the direction, it creates a lot of anxiety about what's to come. And I think it's just a unique perspective that you shared around actually finding the joy in thinking that everything might be completely different 3 years from now, and having that be an exciting thing to look forward to rather than something to fear, because often people will look at that and it'd be a terrifying thought of their life and work being completely different than it is now. But
Yeah. Well,
it's, yeah.
yeah, I think we grow so much in like, and we can grow way faster than we think. Um, like going back to the comparison, 5 years ago, I'm living at home working as a painter and feeling stuck. 5 years later, I have a consulting business and I'm like working with leaders in these incredible businesses and I'm learning so much every day still. So you can change really quickly. And as long as you're like, you know, curious and attracted to the growth and doing the work, then it's impossible to say where that will take you 2 years from now or 5 years from now. And so I like that. I like the idea that like, I'm not going to be doing the same thing as I'm doing today in 5 years. I may not even be doing the same thing in 6 months, depending on how fast things change. And um, I think that's one of the cool things about the world today. Like we can have there's so many different paths ahead of us. And what I've learned is just where I used to try to perfectly think it out and plan it out and then do nothing about it unless I was 100% confident. Now I've learned to go with the flow and feel how things are. And if they're not working or I'm feeling frustrated or like uninspired, that's when I start to like try different things to change it up. But otherwise, I just trust that I'm learning, I'm growing, and the world is changing so fast that like it's not like I could plan what's going to happen in 5 years anyways.
It's going to be so different. You need to have the feedback loops happening. And I think that's such a trap that we all get into, is sitting and researching and thinking and writing and like trying to figure it out, but you're not actually getting any feedback loop with new information about how things are changing. And I think that's where just being in action, out doing something, having conversations with people, trying new things, it creates that feedback loop that informs you so you can make better decisions, which is kind of a different concept to making decisions. Is we often, just want all the information, but we think it's more passive information. There's like an active way of getting more information too. It's something that I've been playing with as like a concept to implement as I'm building my business too, is like that design principle, which all entrepreneurs seem to be very good at, is that feedback loop and iterating and iterating. But I think that's something that we can apply to life as well that isn't as normal or as normalized yet.
Yeah. And I think this tendency comes from the way we're taught in elementary, high school, university. We're trained that there's always a right answer. And our job is to do the work, learn the stuff, read the book, remember the line, whatever it is, and then spit out the right answer. And there's no room for creativity or trying new things or failure within that. It's super regimented. And like I've come out of university, I've learned way more about myself and the world out of university than I ever did in a classroom. And like I don't have a business degree, but I work with the CEOs of businesses with millions of dollars or even hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And I've learned that not by sitting in a classroom or reading a textbook, but by actually just doing it repeatedly and learning and making mistakes and learning and growing. And I know that I personally just learn by doing. And so anytime I find myself trying to think my way to a solution and making assumptions and things, I usually think, okay, there's got to be a way I can try this out. Like, can I have this conversation with someone? Can I do a small example, like test of it somewhere? And it helps to know that I'm confident I can learn if I do it, if I take action.
Mm-hmm. So I'd love to switch gears a little bit. Um, I know one of the things that you're really passionate about, and I am as well, is creating and leading a life that you're actually excited about. And I think it's something that's so much easier said than done. There's so many like common cliches for this kind of thing. What has worked well for you personally on that front, and really being intentional with what you're creating? Because I haven't known you for that long, but you are very disciplined and set really clear boundaries for what you want and what you want your life to look like. And I think it's something that we can all learn from and are continually iterating on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So because I had the experience of coaching so many different business owners with Wow One Day Painting, I was literally seeing new business owners come in and working with them for 2 years. And I was seeing how they started a business, how it overtook their lives in some cases. And I was just watching repeatedly people lose control of the reason they got into business. So many people get into business because they're like, I want more freedom. I want more autonomy. I want more independence. I want to make more money, but I also want to have more family time and be able to take more vacations. And those are like all the dreams of a new business owner. And then they get in and immediately it's like, okay, actually, I'm working 70 hours a week. I'm more stressed. I don't have time for vacations. I don't know when to shut off. And it can start to consume their life. And I kept seeing people come in with the right vision and intention and then lose track of it. And, a year or two in, kind of come to me and say, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. It's not working. And I thought what I understood was it's way harder to shift it when you're that deep in already because you've created patterns and you don't have the boundaries in place. So when I left that job and was trying to decide what am I going to do next, I knew I wanted to start my own business because I wanted the autonomy. I knew I wanted it to be remote because I want to travel and I believe I can work from anywhere. And instead of going and finding a job and then building my life around it, I decided I'm going to write out my plan of like what my ideal work life looks like. So I'm going to figure out how much money do I need to live the comfortable life that I want, and what's the minimum and what's like a maximum. And so I wrote that all out. I figured I can actually live a good life for like, if I make 3 grand a month on the lowest end, I can pay my rent, I can have my car, I can see my friends and live a nice life. On the high end, I was like, I don't need more than like 10,000. If I ever made more than 10,000 in a month, I was like, I wouldn't even know what to do with it. I don't think it would add value to my life if I had to work so much harder to get there. So I kind of set that as a boundary. And then I thought, okay, what's my ideal work schedule in a week? Like, when do I want to wake up? And I decided I don't want to wake up to an alarm ever again because I hate alarms. And so I said, okay, well, if I don't want to wake up to an alarm, I know I naturally wake up like 7:38 every morning anyways. So I won't start working till like 9. And that will just mean I don't have to worry about that. And I don't want to work weekends. I don't want to work weeknights after like 4. So I just started to put in all these things of like, what do I want? And then I went into intentionally designed like a business and a work life that fit within my decisions. And this was also at the same time, my partner, Maddie, was going through the exact same experience with her own business. So we were going through this together and we were constantly like checking in and saying like, is this working? For a while, when we first got into this, I was starting up like a plan to be a coach and she was doing social media. We were working basically like 8:30 or 9 to noon. And then we were stopping for the day and we were going to the beach or we were going out and having some fun. And then sometimes we do some work in the afternoon, but we'd created this really nice pattern of life that fit. And then when I got into the consulting business that I'm in now, I came in and I was like, these are my parameters. This is how much I want to work. This is how much time I want to have off in the year. This is how I want to split that time when I am working. And I've not let it go beyond that because if it fits within that, then I'm happy. And if it expands beyond that and I have to work on a weekend or work a late night or something like that, or I have to wake up really early and I'm tired and I'm not happy, it compromises my well-being and it's not worth it to me. So I intentionally built my work around the life I wanted rather than the other way around.
So I'm really curious because I think a lot of people would align with that vision, and whether it's your vision similar to yours or like their own vision, and they have these ideals and the framework of what they want life to look like, but yet very quickly they're back in those same patterns. It's like, oh, but like this is needed, so I'll just this one time, like, and it's like this snowball happens with saying yes to things. And what I'm hearing you say is you've set clear boundaries, but you've actually stuck to them, which is
Yeah.
the differentiator compared to a lot of people. Is we'll set the boundary, but we don't actually hold accountability to it. So what has that been like? Because I think that's something everybody, especially business owners, need support on. So that the setting of the boundary, that's one aspect that I think most people will understand. But that second part of holding accountability and the conversations to make sure that stays in place, what has that been like for you, and how have you done that?
Yeah, really good question. So it's been hugely helpful that my partner is going through this as well, because we constantly are checking in on our boundaries and our goals and stuff. But also it's that I work with a coach as well, and they help me stay accountable to the goals that I've set and the boundaries I've set. And I know that whenever I've compromised on them, like there's a big thing that I need to get done and I'm working on it till 8. I know that like I don't enjoy that night. I'm more tired and less like present the next day. And it immediately reinforces why I put that boundary in place in the first time. And I just believe that for me personally, I can do the work I need to do in the time that I have planned. And if it doesn't fit in there this week, it will fit in there next week. And it goes back to just all the businesses I've worked with and seeing how your business will consume as much time as you give it. You never hit the end of your to-do list. You could literally work 100 hours a week on your own business and never hit the wall where you're like, oh, great, like everything is perfect and there's nothing I need to do. So knowing that and knowing that I'm in this for the long run, I'm like, how can I sustainably manage my energy, my mental health, and my motivation and engagement in what I'm doing? And I just personally know I've found this over the last 10 years of working, that it's a certain amount of work in a day, a certain amount of downtime in a day, and a certain cadence to how I structure in like exercise and other things throughout that day to keep me energized.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of segue a little bit back to the point that you see and have seen all these businesses struggle, and business owners and entrepreneurs, where they, on the outset, they have this great vision and why they've left corporate to start their own business so they can have more freedom, more time with their family, all those sorts of things. How has your understanding of mental fitness and the concepts from that, how does that lend it to what you see people going through when they start to go down that road and they start to say yes to all the things and they start to get in that survival mode? Like, what have you learned by going through positive intelligence, the mental fitness stuff, and how do you see that being applied to specifically this like intentionality around lifestyle and how you want your business to be?
Yeah, I think it's about, with a lot of people, you start saying yes to more and more things. It's exciting, you're growing, you're getting more busy. And then at a certain point, it starts to become too much. And you have to really consciously decide, like, what am I going to do about this? Am I going to say yes to less things? Am I going to hire somebody to help me? What am I going to do to lower my capacity again and get back to where I want to be? But a lot of people, they end up in that mode and they think, well, it's just busy right now. It'll get better. I'll get through it. I'll catch up. And then they get in this like constant loop of working too hard, being stressed, pushing towards like a burnout state, or like losing touch with why they're doing it. And you just start to do less, like lower quality work. You're less in tune with why you're doing things. You're just more frantic. And ultimately it's not good. You're more inefficient because you're just like flailing to keep up with everything, but you're not being intentional about it. So for me, the mental fitness training was huge because it brought this constant reminder and an anchor throughout my day of take a deep breath before you go into the next call and like center yourself and remind yourself of what am I going in to do right now? What's my goal for this call or what's my goal for this meeting? Or if I start to find myself, I've been sitting at a desk, drinking coffee, working hard for a few hours, and I start to find myself feeling like a little lost or disengaged or frantic. Mental fitness gave me the outlet to say, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to walk away from my desk, take a couple deep breaths, maybe even go for a 15-minute walk. And then when I get back, I know I'm going to be doing better work because I'm going to be more present and focused again. And instead of just pushing through and like your attention is falling, you're starting to like, you're making mistakes. I just don't think that we're robots. And I don't think that we can sit at a desk for 8 hours straight and just bang out stuff at a high value. I think you can work longer than that, but I don't think that you can work at a high level for that long, especially long term, like day after day after day after day. I think that actually you're more efficient to do less work, but more focused, higher quality work.
Yeah. Well, and I think it becomes something that like when you start to push the envelope and you start doing those longer hours and you start in that space of more is better, it becomes almost habitual that you're in a bit of anxiety, that you're feeling this kind of um, lost feeling. Like it just becomes normalized and it feels weird to do what you do. It feels
Mm.
abnormal and uncomfortable to do that because I feel like I'm not doing enough. And that's something that I've really struggled with and battled over the last year since leaving my job is like recognizing that the previous pattern wasn't sustainable. And I think most people could recognize that, but actually breaking that pattern because it becomes so ingrained that it's normal and doing what you're doing is abnormal. Um,
Yeah. Well,
it-
I mean, look, we're young. We're 30. We're in our early 30s. We're starting businesses. There is a time of pushing and like, getting it off the ground, getting it to a stable place. But what I've learned is that once it's stable and you're making, you know, once you've hit your bare minimum where you're like, I can make ends meet, my life is paid for, and maybe I'm not saving money every month, but I'm just like making ends meet. I think at that point, you can actually say, okay, I trust that I'm going to get a little bit better at this every month. The business is going to get a little bit better every month. And eventually I'll be doing more revenue, more income, whatever it is. But if I push myself really hard right now, is it sustainable? Like you said, the question to ask, and I've asked a few entrepreneurs this, is your current like workload and the way that you work sustainable? Like in 3 years from now, if you kept up this pace, would you still be here? Would you still be showing up and doing this every day? And if you say no, then you're just working yourself towards a cliff, basically. And so it's about like kind of pulling back and knowing that I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna be able to hit my goals. And I have a long career ahead of me to make this all work, but I can only be successful in that career if I'm engaged and energized and focused.
it what just hearing you say that, what came up for me was it's so hard to have this one, the self-awareness and self-management to see that that's actually happening. I think for most people, they can't even see that a lot of this stuff is happening. So at first you just have to have the awareness. But then the other side is it's so hard because everybody else is doing the opposite. So you're
Mhm.
totally up against and challenging the status quo of how everybody else is working and their norms. And I find if I'm not really, really confident and intentional and disciplined with myself, I find it very easy to start slipping into what other people are doing because I am seeing them have success. I can see what's working for them. I'm like, oh, if I just do what that guy's doing, then I'll just be like here.
Mhm.
So I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that, the balance of
Yeah.
learning from other people, yet having your own foundation in and confidence in yourself, so you don't get sucked into just doing what other people are doing and comparing yourself to others.
Yeah. I constantly check in daily and weekly on my mental health, my happiness, my energy, my focus, all these things. And whether it's when I wake up in the morning, right before I get out of bed, I'm just like, how am I feeling today? What am I trying to do? Every night before I go to bed, meditating. We can talk about that in a bit, but meditating has been a foundational habit for me. And in being able to just check in with myself repeatedly and see where am I at. And if I'm finding that I've had a couple of really hectic weeks, socially, at business, and whatever else, I'm noticing like I'm more anxious when I'm going to bed. I'm not getting as good a sleep. I'm waking up more tired the next day. I'm maybe not giving myself the time to recharge or to go to the gym or go for a run or whatever that I need. And it is causing me to then be worse the next day. I'm not as focused. I can't get the stuff done that I want to. So I'm just always aware of like, is my energy good? Am I happy? Is what I'm doing working? And if it's not, I'm really, really serious about changing it. So if I go like a week where I'm like, this isn't working, I don't like the way I'm working. Yeah, like I said, I'm not eating as healthy. I'm not sleeping as well. I'm not taking care of myself. Then I'll try to reset and make a new plan for the next week.
Is this just like a personal check-in where you're just like you wake up and you just think about it, or do you have a bit of a process to reflect and keep things front of mind?
Yeah, it before like when I was in my mid 20s, I had a really regimented routine in the morning of like waking up and stretching and meditating and thinking about my like visualizing my day. Like I did all that stuff and it was great and it was hugely impactful. But now I've basically kind of internalized that process and I don't need to do it as strict every day. So some days I wake up and I just don't have the energy to go through the routine and I just jump back into my work or whatever I'm going to do. And then other days I wake up and I realize like the only way I'm going to be able to handle my day the way I want to is if I take 15 minutes right now and either meditate or go for a walk outside first thing in the morning. And that's going to give me the boost that I need to get going. So it was like really practiced before and now it's kind of internalized. Um, and I'm just constantly checking in on it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I created what I've called for myself the epic daily checklist, which is kind of like my if I hit these things throughout the day, it usually means it's a good day. And I've constantly kind of iterated and played with that, which has been really helpful. And it does become more internalized over time. Um, let's you want to chat about remote work quickly?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think
That's a
I think it
favorite
weaves
topic.
in. I think it weaves in with this aspect of like boundary setting, other people's perceptions of what work should be like, and being able to have your own foundation, what you want your life to look like and work to look like. So, um, yeah, like you're somebody that I think you said you spend 2 weeks out of the month, usually on the road or somewhere not at home, um, which is so cool. And I think is probably the common response that you get is, "Oh, that's so amazing."
Yeah.
um, and we had a conversation about this earlier, but what is your response when people are like, "Oh, that's cool. Like it must be so nice to be able to do that kind of thing," because I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I used to just like nod along and say, yeah, it's really nice. I'm really lucky. And then the more times I heard it and the more times I thought about it, I was like, it's not luck. I set out with this as my number one goal. Like when I left my job at Wow One Day Painting, it was because my number one goal in life was to have a remote job that I could live and work from anywhere I wanted. And so with that as the goal, I went out and created it. And it's funny because that happened just as COVID was hitting the world stage. And so I went out to like figure out how am I going to go remote. And I had no idea. And I kind of made the leap. And then COVID happened and it just forced it on almost everyone. And it facilitated it becoming even easier for me to become fully remote. And when I joined my business, when I was kind of having the initial conversations with my partners, I just said to them from day one, my number one priority is autonomy and flexibility, and that I can work from anywhere. And if you can say that's a yes, then whatever I get paid doesn't matter to me nearly as much, because that's my goal. And in other cases, in other people, it may not be as important. But that with that as the goal, then I created the work life around it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's beautiful to work from a beach or a cabin in Whistler, or next to a lake or something. But it also is still work, and it takes planning and intention. So you got to figure out, where's my Wi-Fi or my internet connection going to come from? If I've got calls, what's the scene I'm going to be in? How am I going to remain present and not have distractions? Am I going to have power wherever I am? All these different things come into play. And also, like, how much work do I want to do when I'm in one of these environments? Because what my partner and I have learned through doing all this remote travel is, it's amazing to go to Tofino for a week and to work there, and then, finish work and just go out onto the beach. But if you're spending all this money to be in a place and you're spending almost all of your time working, kind of defeats the purpose, and you feel like you're missing out. So we've kind of had to learn about, how much time do we actually want to work, and when do we want to call it and take in a day off, like a Friday, so we can be present where we are. And then there's also just been challenges around travel. And, if you're catching a ferry and you have no Wi-Fi for 3 hours, you better plan to have work that you can do during that time. So to me, it's about like making it a goal, planning for it. And it is beautiful to be able to do it, but it's not luck. It takes planning and commitment.
Yeah. I think that's something that for a lot of people, especially the older generation, it doesn't quite register quite the same way. There's a bit of a romantic notion of what remote work is. And I haven't done that much of it, even though I've never had an office job. I've always just worked for myself pretty much, or been working remote. But I find it really hard to have a different environment. There's just so many more variables at play. And it's just like, when there's a bit of routine, it's easier for me to drop in and get my stuff done. When you throw in all those other things, it kind of like scrambles my circuits.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that obviously takes some practice to navigate and get used to.
It does. I mean, I was kind of exposed to this when I was with Wow One Day Painting. I was traveling already 2 weeks a month for work. I was going all over North America and doing coaching visits in person. So I, through that, got used to being like pretty much in a different place every other week and learning to work in any environment. But this is different than that. And what I love about it is, when I'm in a new environment, I have a different energy. I have different thoughts. I have different conversations with new people. And I actually find that it really expands the way that I think and work. In a way that, like, if I wake up every day and work at the same desk in the same room, I do like routine as well, but it also keeps me in a certain mindset and place.
Yeah. Yeah. I read recently how being near the ocean or up on big mountains, like, can actually change how your perspective on life and work and stuff like that. Just being in new natural spaces can create that like mental space for you as well. And there's actually, like, I think a bit of research behind some of that.
Totally.
So,
and I think that, like, I love the fact that my business is my laptop and my cell phone. And I just believe I can do the same quality of work from anywhere in the world, because those are my tools. And having conversations and coaching and working online is so easy now. And to me, like, I love what I do, but I also love traveling. And so to be able to combine them, to me, is like the ultimate thing, where I get a greater chance to explore and see the world and be inspired and energized, while also doing what I'm doing and not feeling like the two are totally separate.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the amount of travel that I want to do in my life, I would have to work like 6 months a year and travel the other 6. But if I can combine both, I still take vacation days, I still take holidays, but it also means that I can still be productive and stay on top of things, even though I'm in a new environment.
Yeah. I want to do a quick thunder round. So it's kind of like a
Okay.
lightning round, but I was talking to a friend and he was like, oh, I think it's called a thunder round. So from now on, it's the thunder round.
Okay.
If you could have everyone in the world read a book or have one singular similar experience, what would you want them to do and why?
For a book, I would say everyone should read the book The Third Door by Alex Banayan. It's an unbelievably entertaining and inspiring story of a guy as a like very young like teenager and or like early 20s discovering like his drive and trying to figure out his purpose and asking all the questions we ask ourselves, except instead of trying to think his way through it like I talked about, he just gets out in the world and chases it. And it's actually truly unbelievable what he accomplishes. So I find that book is just full of inspiration, powerful lessons about finding your purpose and going after it in the world. And so I'd highly recommend that for everyone, especially for younger people who are like feeling a little lost or confused or stuck. But just the story alone is incredible. As for an experience, I think like solo backpacking is the most critical experience in my life of understanding the world and how I fit in it and getting space from my reality at home and my friends, and my family. I've spent years of my life backpacking and I would give that experience to everybody if I could.
Yeah. Just experiencing other people's culture and just seeing how different the world is, but how similar it is. I don't know. It's one of
Yeah.
my probably most powerful things that I've done as well.
And the culture shock of coming home and question, like you start to actually get to question the things that you take for granted. And that's powerful.
Mm-hmm. So in the journey of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of things you need to stay focused on. What is it for you that you have to remind yourself again and again and again, because it's so impactful?
Yeah, it's one question, and it's a question that I work on with all the businesses I coach as well. And I read it. It's a Mark Zuckerberg quote, but he said, "The thing I ask myself every single day is, am I doing the most important thing I could be doing right now?" And so this is kind of what I aspire to, and I try to check in. I fail on it all the time, but as a business owner, like I've said, there's a million things you can be doing at all times a day. And too often we find ourselves like deep in a back page of our website, tweaking copy or trying to perfect a Facebook post that you pour yourself into and then like 10 people read, or, you know, typing up email chains that you're going to send to like any of these things that, although important, don't really actually dramatically change the impact of your business as much as the big things that you do, like connecting with a client and helping them, or hiring a new person for your business. Like those are powerful, impactful things. So asking this question, am I doing the most important thing I could be doing right now, is really a good guiding star for me and the businesses I work with. And just a simple way to check in. Most people that I work with, I recommend that they either write it on a Post-it note and stick it on the car, the driving wheel, make it on their phone as a background, like make it present so that you can constantly get reminded. And often if I'm doing something and I'm like, whoa, wait, this is just wasting time, this isn't productive, then I'll pull back and I'll decide, okay, what should I be doing that could make more of a difference? To me, it's really about, am I leveraging my time and impact to the highest level possible at this point?
Mm-hmm.
So like kind of secondary to that, to help frame it even better, is Are you doing a $20 activity? Are you doing a $200 activity? Or are you doing a $2,000 activity? Are you writing are you responding to emails or booking things? Or are you out making a big sale or hiring a person or completing an important project? And the more time you spend doing those $2,000 activities or whatever, the high impact things, the faster you're going to grow and be able to have more impact.
Mm-hmm. I think that's like, so a couple of the takeaways for me from this chat has been one, just like the self-awareness that you've cultivated for yourself, which is really hard to do when there's so much noise and distraction. So it's like the self-awareness piece and how boundaries really set the foundation for you to have that self-awareness and check in and do those things. But there's this other aspect too of like just doing it too, because it's one thing to talk about setting boundaries. It's one thing to like, this stuff isn't new. It's not crazy. It's like, am I doing the most important thing? And I think it's something we do or we think about, but then it's actually shifting to doing that thing, where it's so easy not to execute. If you were to leave somebody with your own personal wisdom on that second piece of going from the thinking or awareness part to the doing piece, what would you share?
What I've learned is that it's a muscle. It's like anything else. Like we all the time have thoughts and impulses, and we have the opportunity to either act on them or to decide that, no, I'm not going to listen to that right now. You could be sitting at home watching TV and you get this thought, I should go to the gym. And when you get that thought, what I've learned is I got to jump up, get on my gym gear and get out the door in the next 5 minutes. Or I'm going to say, no, I'll watch one more episode and then I'll just stay home. And then like I've completely missed on that opportunity. And so, yeah, it's one thing to have the thought of what's the most important thing I could be doing. But then when you have it, you have to actually like consciously say, okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to prioritize a different thing. And the more that you do it and the more that you catch yourself in that, the easier it becomes. And so to me, this is where meditation and mindfulness and mental fitness has been a game changer, because the more present and aware and conscious you are of your thoughts and your ability to act on them, the easier it is to actually do the things that you want to do in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think it's the piece around looking at it like it's a muscle, not as like this one individual thing of should I go to the gym or not, but reframing it as this is me flexing my muscle to execute on the most important thing in my life right now. And it's like all these like little micro things that are leading to that life that you actually want to have, and reframing it makes it such a more powerful like micro example that you'd actually execute on. Like you tie a different why to this smaller thing. And it's just cool to think about every time that, yeah, I'm about to watch Netflix. I'm like, maybe I should read my book instead. And I'll create all these reasons why I deserve to watch Netflix now, or I deserve to chill instead of going to the gym. It's like, no, like actually by saying no and going to the gym, I'm actually building this muscle that makes it easier for me to do that, which makes it easier for me to become that person that I want to be. And have the life that I want to have.
There's a really great way that has helped me frame this. And it's like, are you pursuing distraction, or are you pursuing like inspiration and the things that you want to do? Like entertainment or education? And because of the way our world is and our discomfort with boredom and downtime and our like social media and our phones, we every day are inundated with the opportunity to decide, do I want to scroll on my phone or watch Netflix, or do I want to go outside for a walk or read a book? And it's like you build this momentum. The more that you make the positive choice, the more easy it becomes to make it again. And therefore it cycles. And it's the same thing with your diet. It's like if you're trying to cut sugar or something, or you're trying to drink less alcohol, every time you have an opportunity to binge or to cheat and you say no, it gets easier to do it again the next time. And I'm not saying I'm like, I backslide all the time.
Yeah.
And I make the wrong call all the time. But the more conscious I've become of those decisions and why I'm making them, the better I feel equipped to be able to make the right one the next time.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, this has been a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Where can people check you out and the work that you guys are amazing work you're doing at Trailblaze? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that need that level of support and coaching and consulting.
Yeah. If they're on LinkedIn, they can check me out at linkedin.com/Jordy Tait, or you can search Jordan Tait. And if you're not, and you just want to reach out and talk about any of the stuff we've talked about, you can even just text me at 604-619-3925. And I'd be happy to chat about any of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. It's always a fun chat.
Yeah, I love this conversation. And honestly, you've had a huge impact on my ability to continue on this path of self-awareness through the mental fitness training you gave me. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Take it easy.
Awesome. Have a good one.